Good evening, everyone. My name is John Taves, and I'm the event coordinator at McNally Robinson Booksellers. We're broadcasting to you live from Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We're here tonight to virtually celebrate the launch of Still Me, a golf tragedy in 18 parts by Jeffrey John Eyamie, published by Turnstone Press. We have an excellent evening ahead for you. Jeff will be reading a little bit from the book, and then there'll be a conversation with a very special guest. So during the conversation, if you do have any questions, I'd encourage you to ask them using the Q&A button that you'll find right at the bottom of your screen. Rest assured you can do that at any point during the conversation and you won't interrupt us, so feel free to just toss up your questions as they come to you, and we'll get to them when it comes time to ask some questions. I'll be back at the end to let you know how you can go about getting some signed copies of the book that Jeff has very kindly provided us with. In Still Me, when James Corey discovers that his prized golf memorabilia from some of Canada's best golf courses has been destroyed, he journeys back through memories of being on the fairway, his struggles with gnawing ineptitude, and a troubled relationship with his wife and son. Slowly, his memory precipitates to reveal something deeper at work, and James finds himself in the midst of a game where the stakes couldn't be higher. Born in Quebec and raised in rural Manitoba, the author, Jeffrey John Eyamie, is a Winnipeg-based writer of Lebanese Syrian descent. His first novel, No Escape from Greatness, was nominated for the John Hirsch Award and Eileen McTavish Sykes Award. He's also a screenwriter and filmmaker, a physical scientist with Health Canada, and, as one would expect, an avid golfer. Our special guest for this evening, Lorne Rubenstein, is a Canadian golf journalist who has contributed to newspapers and magazines around the world, including Golf Digest, Golf World, Golf Magazine, The Globe and Mail, and Esquire. He is the author of 13 books and is the recipient of numerous awards and honors, including a National Magazine Award in Canada, Sports Media Canada's Lifetime Achievement Award, and the PGA of America's Lifetime Achievement Award in Journalism. He was also inducted into the Canadian Golf Hall of Fame for journalism. Lorne lives in Toronto, but is virtually with us tonight, as is James Paulson, the publisher at Turnstone Press, who will be joining in the conversation. But now, I'd ask you all to put your virtual hands together and offer a very warm welcome to Jeffrey John Eyamie and Lorne Rubenstein.
All right, thank you very much, John. And all right, it feels strange without applause, I have to say, but because I would be ordering up a round of applause for you, Lorne, right now. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining me for this conversation.
You bet. Nice to be here.
So, and you have, for those who don't know, you have some Winnipeg roots we were talking about earlier.
Or anything that would. Yes, I do. My dad's family. My dad was born in Winnipeg, and I still have some family there. So I have a real soft spot for Winnipeg.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much. I hope today, in the next little while, we'll get a chance to go deep on golf as metaphor, golf as symbol. And the whole question of why golf is what really fascinates me. So I'm hopeful that I can tap into your nearly bottomless amounts of knowledge and experience and thinking around this, and we can have a good chat about it. As John mentioned, I'm going to read a couple of bits from the book in a minute or two. And I'm hopeful that we can really turn this into a conversation. So if you're watching on Zoom, please do send in those questions. We'll be happy to answer them and discuss them as we go forward. So without further ado, maybe I'm going to start us off with a question. And that question is, what makes golf so compelling for you, Lorne? If you could summarize it in a paragraph, what do you think it would be?
Well, I think that, unlike other sports, and I've played them all, at a decent level, in golf, you can actually hit a shot, and just about everybody will hit a shot or make a putt during the course of a round that is as good as any of the best tour pros would make. But you can't repeat it. However, that one or two times you do that during the round, whether it's by accident or not, or you think you're working on something, it suggests to you that you can reproduce that time and time again. Then, of course, you can't. So you ask yourself why, and you're compelled to go out there and see what is going on. It's such a psychological exercise as well as a physical exercise. Your emotions get wrapped up in it. Your identity can get way too wrapped up in golf, and a lot of us, might even bring the game home. And I'm not talking about tour pros. I'm not talking about the best players in the world. Any of us do that. I've done it myself. And then I say, why? It's just a sport. It's just a game. Why am I taking it so personally? Why does it make me feel so good? And a minute later, it makes me feel so bad. So I think there are many, many dimensions to it. And those are just a few, really. There are many, many more, as you know, because as you said, you've gotten rather attracted to the game yourself and have written a book about it.
Yep, absolutely. And with COVID times being what they are, I've managed to get out, more than ever before. And I've told people, like, more golf does not mean better golf for myself, at least. I think golf sort of reveals things about yourself that maybe not a lot of other things would reveal. And sometimes you don't like the answer or what is being revealed. And certainly the challenge of it and the difficulty of it is one of the things that keeps you going, I think.
Well, the two-time Masters champion Ben Crenshaw, he said, if you really want to get to know somebody, and if that person plays golf, go out on the golf course with them, and you're going to learn over the course of 4 hours or however long it takes to play. Even if you're only playing a few holes, something is going to happen during the round that will either incite a golfer to get angry, perhaps, but then has to decide if he or she wants to keep playing decently. Well, what do I do with that anger at myself or at the golf course? You get bad breaks on a golf course, or what you think are bad breaks. I remember Tom Watson once telling me that when he hit a good drive down the middle of the fairway and his ball ended up in a divot, and then the guy he was playing with in his group, it went in the trees and it bounced off a tree into the middle of the fairway into a good lie. He said, you know what? I just had to learn to suck it up. Golf is just, you're playing on 150, 160 acres, and you're going to get so-called bad breaks. So the best thing to do is to realize there's no such thing as a bad break. Just like when you get up in the morning, you really don't know how your day is going to turn out. And golf is just recreation and a sport, but you better learn how to handle those bad breaks and also the good breaks. So, there's so much you can learn out there. And then there's the beauty of the game and the serenity, all of that is a big, big part of it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's man versus nature or humanity versus nature, to be correct, in, a very direct way. And you're trying to impart your intentions upon this little ball in a piece of the earth that someone has designed for you, and literally put obstacles in your path. And so there's rich room for metaphor, that's for sure.
It's interesting that I think, Jeff, that, and in your book, in your novel, you write about this in your chapter, I think when you're playing the Gary Browning courses, Serenity, I think you call that chapter. But you refer to one of the game's conflicts. For any thinking person, there is a conflict. The golf course is a beautiful place, it's true, and you refer to it as a serene retreat. But you could also look at it, if you want to, and I think you refer to this in your book, as a desecration of nature as well. And there are plenty of people out there, and I think about this myself as well. I live around a corner from the golf course that is now a public park, Earl Bales in North Toronto. I grew up there caddying when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, and it was a private golf course restricted to only people who had the money to join it. I was a caddy, it got me into the game. Well, probably 25 years ago, it was bought, it was purchased for development, but it never did get developed. The city bought it, and then it's now a public park. And we had a beautiful day here in Toronto today, and I went for a walk out there. And I was thinking, here's a golf course that was once private. It's now a public park, and I couldn't see it going back to being a private golf course. So there's that conflict. You deal with all of these multiple conflicts in your book, and they're more personal than that. But I think that is a conflict as well for anybody who really plays the game and thinks about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like there's that famous adage, golf is a good walk spoiled, but it kind of sounds like people are going for walks and it was a good round of golf spoiled.
Can be, yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, in Scotland last year, about a year ago this time, and I went to a golf course way up in the north of Scotland in the Highlands called Brora. I went with a buddy of mine who's not a real avid golfer, but he came along with me, played a couple of times during the week. And we just asked the woman at the register there if we could just walk the golf course rather than play it. And she let us, which was, I remember writing an article about it. And so, golf can be a good walk spoiled if you're playing lousy and you look at it like that. But it's also, a hell of a nice place just to go for a walk. And think about going for a walk without golf clubs. You don't hit any bad shots. No good ones either.
That's a good point.
That's for sure.
All right. Well, maybe I should get us going on the first chunk of reading that I want to do here. I should talk a little bit about the book without spoiling it too much. As John mentioned at the open, Still Me is about a fellow who has a collection of golf memorabilia, and he calls his little room of golf shirts the Hall of Fame. And he goes into his Hall of Fame and realizes that all of the embroidered logos have been cut out. And so the book begins as sort of his recollection of some of his favorite rounds that are connected to these missing logos. So the 18 parts correspond to rounds of golf in famous Canadian golf courses that this character James has played. So I'm going to read from the first chapter, which is set at a course called Memfremagog. Have you ever played there, Lorne?
No, I haven't. That's one of the courses I haven't played. It's a super, super private course where the caddies dress up as if they're at Augusta National. But no, I haven't played there. I've heard a lot of good things about it, though.
Yep. And like several of the courses, I'm not going to say which I've played and which I haven't, but clearly I have not played this course. And I don't think I have that kind of pull. However, it's called Memfremagog, and I'll just leave it at that. Okay. On this day, as a fairly green sales manager, I get the feeling I'm punching way above my weight class here. It's not just the exclusive, challenging course, it's the golfers. Golfers who are about to teach me the meaning of the term FISM. Gene, the CEO of one of North America's largest building supply distributors, will be my teacher. Joining us are two of his VPs, Vance, VP of Marketing, and Gordon in Acquisitions, but I can't recall who is who. They could be Gene's twin sons, except sons would never kowtow and genuflect every time their father looked at them. Selling product is not why I'm here. In terms of a sale, the decision's been made already. The CEOs know each other. They do CEO activities together, like golf at 1%er courses and fly their private jets around in circles. It's not like I need to convince Gene to buy from us. It's a question of how much. My mission is to golf like I know what I'm doing and make CEO Gene smile with me, but not laugh at me. I need to play the round and get out of here without bringing shame upon my employers like a Japanese salaryman trying to avoid Haji. The commission from a sale of this magnitude would make my year. What's more, if I impress Gene, I might be able to pump up the numbers on his purchase order. So I'm doing my best James the salesman. Personable, PG rated, pleasant. A commission like this could pay for Payne's Montessori tuition. I always say that word wrong. Montessori tuition. And Faith tells me that's what he needs. I have a lot of reasons to play my best golf. Be cordial but quiet, while basking in the splendor of this expression of golf, unlike anything I've ever experienced. plenty of reason not to be me. There are no power carts at Memphremagog, walking only. Course is in such pristine condition that it looks like it has never been played before. Mist rises from the earth, tinged with a golden hue from the morning rays of the June sun. The theme song for the Masters tournament plays in my head, that lilting piano lullaby they play every spring at Augusta National. That tune oozes privilege and exclusivity and nostalgia. Memphremagog conjures up those vernal notes for me. I learned quickly that the greens here are not to be trifled with. They are undulating and lightning quick. I know they measure green speed using a stimp meter, so I tell the guy I think is Vance that this green must be a lot of stimps. Honestly, I have no idea whether 2 or 200 is a lot of stimps. I probably should have looked it up. Vance grins back at me, murmurs something inaudible that has the cadence of a quippy reply, so I say, yeah, and chortle. The first tee gives a downhill view of a dogleg right. The bunker sets up in the exact location you want to put the ball, in the crook of that elbow. I can't see the green from the tees. Gene has the honor of the first shot because he's Gene. He's a thick bull mastiff of a man, bow-legged and pot-bellied, and unabashedly a CEO of a major national corporation. An alpha from those old days when men thought it was good to act like an intimidating, mindless dog. It got Gene this far. He doesn't need to change, even if the world has. His form is typical of an out-of-shape old man who golfs a lot. Short swing, no twist to it, simply one violent strike with a quick follow-through, and, of course, Gene's drive lands in perfect position. I don't know if there's such a thing as divine justice, but I do know that fortune is not divided equally among us humans. I know the reason why Gene's shitty technique lands him a perfect drive. It's the same reason he's the CEO of a major national home supply corporation. It's because he's Gene. Vance is younger and stronger, but he sits his ball on the tee so ridiculously high that I suspect he has skied this drive on purpose so as not to show Gene up. Vance's opening shot lofts high and short and left, rolling over a hump and skittering off into the leftward rough. It's a longer shot than Gene's. Vance looks embarrassed. Gordon does right by his career aspirations and fires his ball off the hosel of the club, the curvy part where the head becomes shaft, making his shot squib into the ground at an earth-hugging diagonal. The spin snakes his shot into a thick patch of rough about 100 yards away. My turn. With tee in hand, I stride to the box and survey the hole, all the while channeling an alter ego I've been grooming to take care of moments like this. James, the golfer, isn't me. He doesn't get nervous when strangers watch him try to perform. Likewise, James, the salesman, is so funny. He really gets you. He can give you what you need. James, the salesman, isn't really me either. But this combination of two men who aren't me is what I'm trying to channel right now so I can get this ball down the track to get along with the rest of my foursome and not blow the sail. Golfing with less than full authenticity doesn't pay off. I swing the driver like it's a baseball bat and barely skim the top of the ball off the tee, placing so much topspin on it that it bounces into the turf of the tee box and bounds forward perhaps 50 yards. What do? Take a mulligan with guys I've never met before on the very first hole? Gordon motions toward me, indicating it's his turn, but Gene holds a hand up and says, looks like a FISM. Gordon halts. I have no idea what Gene is saying, but I know I'm furthest from the flag and there's no mulligan in my future. So I hustle up to my ball, embarrassed at how milquetoast it was. I quietly eke out a triple bogey 7, every shot different than the last. Being consistently bad would score better than being this inconsistent. We'll talk more about FISM than in the next chunk of reading. So, okay. So I wanted to talk to you about one of your books that has really hit home for me, Lorne, and that is Mo and Me. And for those who don't know, Mo and Me is your profile of Mo Norman, who is maybe, I think he actually is gaining more and more notoriety as time goes on. I think YouTube actually has helped Mo Norman a lot, and some professional golfers as well. But your book really struck me, not just because of Mo and Mo's character, but the memoir aspects of it. also hit home for me as well. And I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit about putting that book together and your experiences with Mo Norman.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the more, maybe the most personal book that I've written. And, I first met Mo, who the subtitle of that book, Mo and Me, is Encounters with Mo Norman, Golf's Mysterious Genius. And, he really was a mysterious genius. There are some people who think that he was somewhere on the autism scale. It's possible he had Asperger's. He was never diagnosed, but he found the perfect sport for himself, for somebody who had difficulties with the social side of the game or the social side of anything. But I was very fortunate. When I was 12 or 13 years old, I grew up very near in Toronto here, a place called de Havilland, which had a 2-tiered driving range. It had a 9-hole golf course. It had a massive putting green. It had a night-lit par 3 course. And I mentioned my dad before, and he would take me there in the evenings, and you would see this guy on a hot July night, 90 degrees perhaps. He's wearing slacks that are 3 inches above his ankles. He's wearing a turtleneck. He's sweating head to foot, and he's hitting the ball perfectly. I mean, it's not really varying in its flight side to side. So I asked, who was that? And my dad told me it was Mo Norman, and I was fascinated with him right away. And later, a few years later, when I became a writer, started writing golf, I made sure I kept all of my notes about Mo. I tried to see him, watch him in tournaments, and he succeeded at high levels in Canada. But when he went down to the States to play, he was so introverted that, as I said a moment ago, he had difficulty with the public side of the game. He did play in a couple of Masters, but was kind of laughed off the tour. However, to me, he's the most interesting person I've ever met in golf. And I've met them all. I mean, Nick Price, Annika Sorenstam, you name them, I've met them and written books with some of them. But Mo, maybe because, I have a master's in psychology, and I was very interested in the mental side of the game. And Mo, it seemed to me, instinctively played golf almost as if it were hockey. He took no time at all. He took no practice swings. He would just stand up to the ball, and before you knew it, he hit it. And he hit it, as I say, dead straight all of the time. Golf ball didn't rotate. They've done studies, Titleist did studies of them, and found out that the ball did not spin side to side. It just turned over forward. So anyway, he conquered that side of the game. All of us want to turn golf. You mentioned this before. You want to turn it into a target game, a reaction game, but it's hard to do that because there's so much time to think. Mo handled that by just not thinking. He just played unconsciously. So I was fascinated with him and finally decided it's time to put all of my notes together and write a book, which became, as you say, part memoir, part analysis of Mo. And, I'm very glad I did it, and it had a nice response. And, he's still, he died in 2004, but he still is the most interesting person I've ever met in the game.
Yeah, and for those who follow the professional game, if you have seen what Bryson DeChambeau's done with his golf swing, I can't help but think of Mo Norman's, the way that his mechanics are with the driver. Looks kind of similar to me with the outstretched hand and just really sort of taking that plane, the second plane away, not without getting too technical. I see, like, I kind of feel like he was ahead of his time a little bit, Mo Norman.
Well, he was.
Yeah, and the intuitive aspects of playing for me are really fascinating. As we were talking about earlier, like, I'm stuck in my head, and that's one of the things that I love about golf is it forces you outside of yourself. You have to kind of be able to observe yourself from outside of yourself to think about what you're doing wrong, or to think about your mechanics, have a swing thought, however you want to put it. And people that can do that type of thing intuitively and consistently are amazing to me. And I have an admission to make as well. I snuck out into a driving range, like you mentioned in the book, and I tried to, give it a swing the way that Mo does with his unorthodox mechanics, and see what I could get. And one time out of 20 was really, really neat.
Yeah, I introduced Mo at a number of clinics over the years, and I played a fair bit of golf with him. And there was one time down in Florida, I said, I'm going to try and play like Mo. And for 8 holes, I mean, I stood far from the ball. I put the club head a foot behind the ball as he did, that sort of a thing. And I hit the ball beautifully. I really played well. But then on a par 3 on that 8th hole, water in front of the green, woods off to the left, I hit 3 balls that were just poor shots. And all of a sudden, I wasn't Mo Norman anymore. It was myself. So, you know, it's hard to do. I mean, and the other thing with Mo is that the way that he plays and the way DeChambeau plays also, you have to be willing to stand up in front of crowds, big crowds, and perhaps they're going to laugh at you. And people did laugh at Mo all of the time because he did it so differently than anybody else. It was so unconventional. And DeChambeau's a bit like that too. He's so far out there beyond the edges in terms of the way he's swinging and what he's did with his body, gaining 40 pounds so quickly and being so concerned about distance. The golf club itself is the same length, every club. So, you know, he is very scientifically oriented, and Mo did all of that instinctively, really. You know,
Yeah.
He really did. And DeChambeau was doing it as a matter of study, and he has referred to Mo and studied him, and he's taking it even further, I think.
Yeah, and it's almost the exact opposite approach where it's just all cerebral and it's all conscious. But anyway, back to topics that bringing it back to the book that we're launching here. I think that the main character, James, really tries to improve as the rounds go on, and much like me, he takes advice from here and there, and when you are constantly attempting to learn, you very rarely execute. And
At the same time.
right, exactly. So I think that's one of the levels that fascinates me about golf. But I want to go deeper. I want to talk about loss a little bit, and I think because this is a sport that is played by people of all ages, I think golf has it's maybe not an advantage, but it's one of the things that comes with playing the sport and participating in it is people who are, you know, not as young and maybe have health issues or are getting closer to the end also play golf. I learned golf from my grandfather. It's a retirement activity for him. And I mean, he became a different character when he started golfing. They started to call him Chi-Chi because he used his putter like a sword, like Chi-Chi Rodriguez did way back when. And you know, that's just one of the parts of golf that is interesting to me is there's a little bit of, it's maybe not sadness, but, and I'm not talking about professional golf. I mean, when you're out with friends or people at the club, you know, people get long in the tooth and suddenly you're checking in on, you know, the people you know that at the golf course and how are they doing? What's their health like? So-and-so passed away and so forth. And I think that it's one of the beautiful things about golf and maybe, you know, trying to turn golf into the most symbolic thing that it can be, which is something that I think this novel attempts to do. Golf and health and golf and really life are really important connections for me to make.
Yeah, I mean, you bring that out very well in the book and these varying relationships. And I mean, the reader is always aware, at least I was aware of the multiple conflicts that James is trying to work out, maybe without even knowing he's trying to work them out on that large canvas of a golf course. And you see that all the time in golf because it takes some time to play and you have these conversations with people, especially when you're walking a course as opposed to being in a cart. You know, you hit your shot, I hit my shot. Maybe on one hole, they're close to one another. So we walk down the fairway and we chat. And over that period of 4 hours, we'll chat probably about some fairly personal things, if we're comfortable with one another. But then also there's a kind of a departure from one another, because you'll hit it on the right side of the fairway, I'll hit it on the left side of the fairway. So it's a very interesting and unusual combination, I think, in sports, of coming together and then drifting apart, and then coming together and then drifting apart. And that lends itself, I think, to conversation and to openness. And I think you really hit that, hit it on the needle in your book there, that coming and going and coming and going, and especially on these multiple canvases across the country where you take the reader.
No, thank you. And that was a lot of fun going and I have to say, credit to my publisher, Sharon Caseberg, saw an early draft of my book, and there were a lot of Manitoba courses in the book. And she said, this is fiction. You can write about places that you haven't been. And so I very consciously in future drafts took a look at as many courses as I could look at. And I selected, a little bit from everywhere to give us a little bit of a tour across Canada of some really interesting courses. And there are a ton that I couldn't put in the book, but there's so many interesting places to experience while golfing in Canada. Like it blew me away, and I was expecting to see interesting things.
I have a question for you along those lines.
Yeah.
Somewhere you write that the course is a venue for us to express ourselves. It's a line that you use, and it's so true. Did you find that as you were imagining the book, I know you haven't played all the courses that you wrote about, but did you find as you wrote the book that the courses themselves, and they're different across the country, one from the other, that they became venues for you as the writer to express different parts of yourself?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, they kind of have, well, much like when you're actually golfing, there's almost like a tone to the course. Like if you were a musician or a writer, you are worried about tone a lot, right? And it's another way of saying a vibe or a feeling. But certainly, like if you're at the northernmost golf course in Canada and there's no grass or nighttime while you're golfing, and there's dust in the air and so forth, it's a completely different vibe than something where you can see the CN Tower from the course. It absolutely did affect the story. The courses did contribute to the tone of each round for me as I was writing them. And I think a little bit about the level of adversity that those courses have. Having golfed the Southwood course here in Winnipeg a few times, I became an admirer of Thomas McBroom's designs and just sort of studying what he's done and the way he does it. And I'm certainly no expert when it comes to golf course architecture, but it's fascinating to me. And I think he's celebrated a lot for taking natural elements and kind of using what is there rather than shaping things unnaturally. And I became really interested in that. I still am. And I've got more drilling down to do there when it comes to golf course architecture and design.
It's interesting. You couldn't find golf courses more different from one another than, let's say, Cabot Cliffs or Memphremagog to the course you played in the Northwest Territories. I'm not even sure of the pronunciation. Ulukuktok, is that the right pronunciation?
I call it Holman.
Holman.
but yes, I think it's Ulukuktok.
Ulukuktok. So,
Yeah.
You don't have hockey rinks that are that different from one another. Or
That's right.
Realize they vary, but not to the extent that, let's say, those golf courses vary from one another. And it's still the same game.
Yeah. You were talking about traveling together in a cart or walking alongside each other and then splitting up and playing, and that whole dynamic of being outside of yourself and connected to another person, and then being back inside of yourself and trying to manage yourself, your mind and your body. It's I think it is one of the most compelling parts of of the game. Look at the time. That's okay. So I have a second part to the reading about FISM that I'd like to share. And then perhaps we should see if there are any questions as well. Okay. So if you'll recall, this is not much has happened since last I read. We're at that Memphrémagogue course, and we're about to learn the meaning of FISM. Okay. You got kids? Dean asked me as we walk off the first and head for the par 5 second. 5-year-old boy. This is the third day of my trip, and it doesn't feel like an escape anymore. I'm thinking about faith and pain increasingly more, despite my best efforts. So I run the list of justifications through my head. You're bringing home the bacon. You're better in small doses. You don't have the stamina to be at home for that long anyway. This is the way these business trips always go. By day 4, I'm ready to go back home. And then by day 4 at home, I'm ready to hit a course. That's what life's about, Gene says, or so they tell me. No kids? Gene makes a face like he tastes something bitter. Not for me. Gene pauses to inject his tea into the earth and says, I decided to build something bigger. I have no choice but to nod. I know he's referring to the business he runs, and sure, business is a big deal, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out you need to share and pass it on. Even I can figure that out. It's 560 yards to the center of the elevated green from the blue tees on this par 5, and despite its relative straightness, the hole is treacherous majesty. Again, of the 4 of us, I hit the shortest, and I can see Gene is bemused, and Sora's execuclones. In golf, when you're away, the furthest from the flag, you go next. There's an exception on courses that are trying to churn through as many players as possible called ready golf. When you're ready and the away player isn't ready, you play. At Memphrémagogue, there's no rush. It's all formality here. Gene gets tired of waiting for me and plays ready golf. An alarm sounds in my head. I'm blowing it. Sorry, I call out to the others as I hurry it up. Finally, my 6th shot lands on the green, just trickling past the fringe and onto the putting surface. I'm still away. As I make the eternal walk from my bag to my ball, putter in hand, I can sense the 3 of them examining me. Since I didn't expect to be a part of this game, the only golf shirt I had in my suitcase was an old one from Victoria Beach. I was hoping to play some golf on this business trip, but I didn't anticipate anything this elite. Suddenly, I wish I was duffing my way down a municipal course somewhere else. The green is long and egg-shaped once you elude the narrow strip of approaching fairway, bookended by 2 inkblot-shaped bunkers. I'm probably 30 feet from the pin, and I can't figure out how many different breaks there are. 2, 3? It seems to go mostly uphill, but not entirely. I strike the ball far too lightly. The other guys are not 12 feet from the hole. My ball goes left and right, stopping 20 feet away. FISM once again, Gene says, and the yes men chuckle with him. Too aggravated to care, I march to my ball, draw my putter back like a broken pendulum, and let it fly. I smash the ball past the cup between 2 other golf balls, leaving it furthest away once again. What did you say your name was? Gene says, and the question makes the bottom of my stomach drop. Jim Coury, I say, through gritted teeth, trying to contain my sense of Haji. He wants my name so he can report me to Carl and get me shit canned. Jim Coury is the grand champion of FISM, eh, boys? Guffaws at my expense. The words erupt out of me. Okay, FISM. Why don't you tell me what the hell a FISM is? He doesn't know what FISM is, Vance tells Gordon, or vice versa. He is FISM, the other replies. You never heard of FISM, boy? Gene asks me, but he doesn't give me much time to respond. It stands for fuck, it's still me, he says. And if you're a double par, you can pick your ball up and the rest of us actual golfers can finish the hole. You can take me to fancy golf courses and I can play them. I can pretend to be someone I'm not, and sometimes I would succeed. But in the end, fuck, it's still me. All right. Hence the title. So anyway, let's see, it is getting to be almost that time. Maybe we'll take a question if there is one. Mr.
Yeah, Jeff,
James.
there is a question here. We got another Jeff has a question. I'm assuming probably for both of you. what course do you most want to play in your life before, I guess this is a bucket list question, before you die, and why would you choose that particular course to be the one that you most desperately want to play? Jeff, Lorne, maybe you guys can both respond to that one.
Sure, I'll jump in. It's an easy one for me right now because I had tickets booked to and a place to stay booked in Cape Breton, and I was going to do Cabot Cliffs and Cabot Links in 1 week, but thanks to COVID, that got canceled. So, and Cabot Cliffs is in the book. It's one of the featured courses in the book, and having studied it, I'm just amazed. I need to play that 17th hole par 3 and see if I can actually hit it over that water hazard. But being a prairie guy, it's surrounded by ocean, views of the ocean on every hole. It's a no-brainer for me. That's the one.
Well, speaking for myself, I've been fortunate enough to play a lot of the, really great courses of the world. So, but there is one that is not very well known at all, except the people who are really heavily into golf. And it's one I'd like to play. I don't know if I ever will. It's in Hutchinson, Kansas, and it's called Prairie Dunes. I'm a great advocate of kind of wild golf courses where the wind will blow and open expanses of field with greens tucked into corners, that sort of a thing, and the high grasses blowing and almost like wheat fields. So it's just a course, no particular. It is a really good golf course. It's one I've always wanted to play, and the other one down that way would be Sand Hills in Nebraska, that Ben Crenshaw and Bill Coore did, and I haven't played there as well. But you know what? If I don't play those courses, I'm very grateful for having been able to play so many wonderful courses around the world. So even if I don't play those two, I can't complain.
Nice. Yeah, that reminds me, I played a course in Idaho called Quail Hollow. And I think there are several Quail Hollows in the States, but this one was, I made the mistake of walking it and I went up and down 4 mountains, but there were actual quail running through the course, and just absolutely loved it. And again, tons of elevation changes, and for a prairie guy, that's pretty exciting.
It's always nice to have an image in your mind of where you would like to play. There's always another course.
That's right.
There's another question here from forgive me if I mispronounce it. It's Oi, who is asked, are any of the characters in the book based on real people that you know, Jeff? Everyone wants to know if they've been written into a book.
Yes. I don't know legally what I can share. I think all characters, any resemblance is purely coincidental, I believe is, but life inspires me and I think that it makes for realistic fiction if you base your characters on maybe amalgams of people or elements of people. So yes, I would say all the characters are inspired by people I know. Yeah, it's an interesting question because if I am correct, I believe that person's last name may share a last name of one of the characters in the book.
And John asks, not John Taves, a different John, Jeff, as a Southdale guy, how much of your own experience mirrors your protagonists, not realizing Niagara was in your backyard?
You know what? Yes, that's a very insightful question, John. And I definitely had that view. I grew up on the other side of the tracks, and it just so happens that the other side of the tracks is where Niagara Golf Course is. But for most of the people in my neighborhood, they could afford to go to a course like that, and I could not. And so growing up, I resented privilege like that. And I think one of the lessons I've learned is it's a waste of energy, first of all, to have that type of resentment. But everybody has certain privileges and everybody has their tales of woe. And I think that if you're fortunate enough to experience a place like Niagara, which is, You know, Stanley Thompson designed, beautiful course, right in the middle of Winnipeg. Really, like it's a gorgeous place, and it does. It might be something that not everybody gets to experience, but if you get to, just appreciate it, for sure. It's a lesson I've learned.
Great. I kind of have a question for myself. We've kind of ended with the questions from the audience, and it's about this conflict that you and Lorne, have been talking about with golf and life. And it kind of popped up in my mind as like one of the struggles that James has throughout there. That he's driven and obsessed with golf, which in some ways gets in the way of a lot of things in his life. But then golf is also his path to redemption. So, we're talking a lot about self-reflection and self-improvement. So from the both of you, what would you say is golf salvation or damnation?
Well, it can, I guess it can be both, really. I mean, there are many, many stories of people who have so-called found themselves, on the golf course after a difficult time in their lives, whether it's for consolation or, as Jeff was saying, loss or remembrance. It can certainly be all of that, but it can also make you into a person who is so singularly obsessed with what, after all, is a trivial matter. I mean, as Rory McIlroy says, one of the best golfers in the world, on his Twitter handle is something like, I think it's exactly this: I hit a white ball around a field. And that's what he does. He hits the ball around a field. And so if you get so obsessed with that it dominates your life, it can be damnation. And you often hear from tour pros that they only start playing to their real potential when they start to play like a kid again and relax into the sport and don't take it home with them. And it's much easier said than done, for tour pros particularly. So I really think it can be both, and it's a matter of how you perceive the game and your place in it.
Yeah, well said. I'm not sure I could say better than that. And I do think those high performance golfers sometimes try to simplify things in their own mind and come up with Zen statements like that. But, there's a lot. Having been a person who learned the game recently, I don't have the muscle memory, right? So it's been a struggle to go through the long checklist of all the things to consider when it comes to like hitting a golf ball well. And one of the way, when you have that sort of muscle memory, what you want to start doing is forgetting about all those things and let your intuition take over, let your body take over. And, that might be my salvation, because I am stuck in my head a lot. And, if I'm able to kind of get to that point where I'm intuitively golfing, bravely intuitively golfing, I think that's, even if the results aren't there golf wise, I think I'm really achieving something. So
that's great.
All right. Well, I see that our time is coming to an end, and so
I think we're finished with the questions so far.
Great. Well, I do want to say, this is a book launch, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch. And I know there are a lot of options at home. Hopefully, this has been entertaining and interesting for you. Having done book launches, many book launches now, both as a writer and in support of writers, I can say a book launch is not like a rocket ship launching into the sky. It's a lot more like when you're in elementary school and you're playing parachute, and you've got one ball and all of you have to pull on that parachute and see how high you can launch the ball up into the air. And if we all pull hard enough, sometimes one of those balls will get up into the sky. And so I want to thank you, because that's why it's really important for all of you guys to show this kind of support. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for taking the time. And Lorne, I actually must say, I had a friend who I had asked to have this conversation with me, TSN's John Liu, who may be here watching us, but unfortunately he fell ill. And I thought, you know what? Let's aim high. And so I cold called you and asked you very kindly if you'd be interested, and you so graciously said yes. And I'll never forget that gesture. Thank you so much. And I've had a great time speaking with you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your inviting me, and I know what it takes to write a book. You've written a novel, of which there aren't that many, really worthy golf novels. So I applaud you for that. And I wish you the best with this book. May it be successful and you go on to write other books. So congratulations on its publication.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. And hopefully we'll see you on a course someday.
Yeah, well, if you ever get to Toronto, give me a call and I'll do the same if I get to Winnipeg.
100%.
All righty.
And I'm going to continue the gratitude going. So thank you again. Thank you so much, Lorne Rubenstein, for joining us here this evening and for being a part of the event. To Jameis from Turnstone, not only for publishing the book in the first place, but also for joining us and fielding the questions. Jeffrey John Eyamie, of course, for writing the book, without whom we would not be together. And all of you for joining us here tonight, both live here on Zoom, and we have a lot of people watching on YouTube too. So hello to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us here this evening. We are here to celebrate Still Me, a golf tragedy in 18 parts. Copies of the book are available from McNally Robinson. Jeff very kindly stopped by earlier on today and signed all of our stock, so there are plenty of signed copies available for you all also. Now those are available in store. You're welcome to come and join us. We're always happy to see you. But they're also available over the phone, and they're available online. We ship both within Canada, elsewhere, and even within the city. So you don't even need to leave your house to acquire a copy of this book. We'll get it to you one way or another. But in closing, I'd just like to thank you all one final time for joining us here tonight. Have a very good evening, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone.
Stay well, everybody. Thank you very much.
Hold on.